好的，接下来呢，我要为各位请上的是来自于瑞典中国合作促进会的理事，也是“一带一路”专家学者侯赛因·阿卡里先生为今天的大会致辞。掌声有请 ，Welcome。
Thank you very much. I'm honored to speak in this esteemed and wonderful forum with the wonderful organization, and I thank also the sponsors for inviting me to speak in this very important conference. I would also like to thank all the wonderful young volunteers and assistants who have helped a lot. My name is Hussein Askary. I'm a member of the China-Sweden Business Council, which is dedicated to promoting economic business relations between my second home country, Sweden, I'm Iraqi by birth, and China, for the common benefit of both Sweden and China, but also other countries in the world. The China-Sweden Business Council also contributed last month in launching the first Belt and Road Association in Sweden, called the Belt and Road Executive Group for Sweden, the BRICS, to promote the importance of the BRI and the importance of Sweden participating in that project. At the same time, I have been a member of an international think tank called the Schiller Institute, and in the past 24 years since I joined this Schiller Institute, both the Institute and myself have dedicated enormous time and energy to promote the idea of rebuilding the Silk Road, a new Silk Road to connect all nations with modern infrastructure projects as a new world economic order. And we produce many studies and reports. These are the last two ones. And this is our concept of global connectivity. We were calling on nations to, especially in the West, to go for this kind of new economic order in the world. But our call was answered by His Excellency President Xi Jinping in September 2013 when he announced the economic belt of the Silk Road in Kazakhstan, and that was a very special day for both myself personally and for the Schiller Institute, because we do believe that this opens a new era in international relations and a new era in the history of the world. The Belt and Road is already changing the world into a positive direction, creating new type of relations between nations, through economic cooperation, economic development. But without China's amazing industrialization process in the past 30 years, this would not have been possible. And in that sense, China also, of course, has learned from the rest of the world in this process, but now it's time for the world to also learn from China. As the great philosopher Confucius says, "He who thinks but does not learn is in great danger." And that should be the principle now. Now, the Belt and Road will transform living conditions in all countries it reaches and works in. This will lead, of course, to higher living standards, as it happened here in China. You yourself experienced this. And this will have enormous impact on the production and consumption of food. As you see, this is a study which was a projection which was done by Professor Mai Fangquan from the Agricultural Information Institute of China, and also a United Nations expert. And you can see a very special development right in the middle, where the protein production and consumption is taking place, and you have a dramatic increase, but there's less emphasis on the periphery with the production of grains and vegetables. Now, this is not a luxury question. The early years of a child growing, it's very important to have a protein and calcium rich diet. But as you grow in age, you don't really need that much, so you have to be careful about that. But it's very important for children to have this kind of diet. Now, this is a projection into the future with a comparison with Japan. Now, you can imagine this happening in most countries in the world, especially the underdeveloped countries of the world today. And you can imagine also how much more land and how much more technology and infrastructure will be necessary to meet the needs of people. Now, the world is, of course, in spite of the Belt and Road, is not devoid of challenges. As our earlier speaker mentioned, this report was issued by the United Nations on the world hunger level. We have good spots in the world where things are improving, but we still have 800 million people who cannot meet their needs of food in the world. And if you take a look at this map, you see the location of these countries. Now, there are very big challenges because as the Belt and Road advances, we will have to imagine this, that the humankind, it took 10,000 years since the invention of agriculture to increase the annual food production to 7 billion tons per year. That's what it took in 10,000 years. The world population will double, most probably by 2050. This means that you will have to double all the 10,000 years it took. You have to double that production in 30 years. And this is what is amazing and fascinating about the prospects for the Belt and Road. That can be achieved with even existing technology we have today. But if you look at the countries located in this area, now there are two kinds of problems. First, you have scarcities. You have physical scarcity of water, and you have economic scarcity of water, which I will discuss. But also you have what China has correctly identified, 3 bottlenecks in these countries, which is first the lack of capital, the lack of infrastructure, and the lack of skilled labor. And you see the location of these countries is along this map. Now, this is an exaggerated map of the world dry areas. There are deserts, semi-arid areas, and arid areas. So this is not complete desert, but these are dry regions. And you can see this is not a national, regional, or even continental. It's a global challenge. It's a transcontinental challenge, will require the cooperation of many, many nations. But the Belt and Road is promising to solve this problem. President Xi Jinping, in the Forum on Africa and China-Africa cooperation just last month, he mentioned that controlling desertification will be one of the priorities of cooperation between China and Africa. And I have seen myself, I have personal contact with Chinese companies who have been very, very successful in this aspect. And China's contribution, even in this respect, will be very, very important. This is a study which was presented, a project presented by a friend of ours, Moussa Seck from Sierra Leone. It was presented, now it's adopted as an official strategy for the NEPAD countries. As His Excellency mentioned, there are many parts of this project being established in, or worked on in Africa. But you will need much, much more, because if you see in the right side where the situation is today, is that only 4% of all arable land in Africa is irrigated. Africa has a potential of 300 million hectares of land to be irrigated. Only 13 million hectares are irrigated. So you can imagine if you provide the infrastructure, transport, water system, irrigation, power, because without power you cannot do anything, even in agriculture, you can transform this situation from where it is now to where it should be by 2025. If this policy is successful, of course with the help of China, but many other countries, you can eliminate hunger in Africa by 2025. But it will require massive investments in infrastructure, in education, and in scientific research. You may be familiar with the gentlemen, Dr. Yuan Longping and Dr. Monty Jones. They won the World Food Prize, the Nobel Prize for food production for their research in new breeds of rice. This is what it will take to eliminate the hunger from the world. We will need massive investments in infrastructure, as I said, but we will also need systems for education, new types of agricultural products, new types of managing agriculture, new types of handling agricultural products, and so on and so forth. You see in the green map, that area is, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, is optimal area for production of maize, corn. Now you can imagine this area is as large as China itself. So with the availability of infrastructure, it will transform this area, transform this region. So I can spend the whole afternoon telling you about all the wonderful projects being built, all the wonderful projects being planned, but I will stop here because we don't have time for that. What I want to end with is to say that from where I stand and look at the world, I see a great promise for the whole world. And one very strong reason for my optimism is the Belt and Road Initiative and the miracles that China has achieved. So if you have any questions or inquiries, you can visit us at the China-Sweden Business Council desk on the second floor. I would thank you very much. 谢谢。